Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Channeling History. We're the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen. Brought to you on the Parax Radio Network. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I will be doing the channeling tonight.
And I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host. Last week, we had a rather interesting show in which we investigated 3 historical events: the Roswell incident, the moon landing, in which we channeled Neil Armstrong, and the Bermuda Triangle, with the disappearance of Flight 19 back in 1945. The show's available on our YouTube channel. Tonight, we will be speaking with the souls of 2 famous Chinese philosophers, Buddha and Confucius. I will be asking the questions as usual. All of our shows are available on our YouTube channel in Barry's name, or if you would like to download them, go to Podomatic.com and just search Channeling History. And please tell your friends about us so we can grow our audience.
Okay, now we always give a small disclaimer because we have no idea what our spirits are going to say. But with so many people not believing that we're truly speaking with the spirits, it's kind of important that we do it. So anyway, the opinions, statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits, do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of the Parax Network, or of our sponsors. Now also, before we speak to the spirits, we always say a prayer of protection. So Connie's going to say the prayer, and we'll begin with our show for tonight.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and protect us from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. Amen.
Okay, tonight our show is going to be very interesting. We're speaking with Confucius and with Buddha. Now, they both obviously lived in the 5th century BC, and they've both had lives since those of the great philosophers. But we're going to ask them about some things that went on during those early lives, and we've had both of them on before. They're incredible guests. So, Connie, let's begin with Confucius.
Okay, thank you, Confucius, for joining us. Would you like to begin with a message?
Yes, I would. When I lived, things were very, very different. But in many ways, they're very similar to what's happening today. It was a time where people worshipped many different deities. They would have different gods, or they simply would not believe in any type of individuals on the other side. You see, this was 500 years roughly before Christianity, before Jesus walks the earth. So think of a time when absolutely no one spoke of God, spoke of Jesus, but it was a time of much poverty. The rich were very rich, the poor were very poor. There was a middle class, the merchants, people that traded with others. But it was also a very, very brutal time. Today, in many instances, there's a lot of similarities. You're still living in a very brutal time. You're in your wars today. Many thousands of people are killed. Many people have accumulated great wealth, just the same as in my time. Many people could care less about the others that walk around them. So it was a time where things were very, very different, but some were still similar. So anyway, thank you for having me. And Connie, I know you have messages for me or questions for me.
That I do. You were born in 551 BC. Will you tell us about China in those days?
Well, as I was saying, it was a time of great disparity in China. The ruling class was extremely wealthy. The armies were very brutal. There were many living in abject poverty. There were no social nets in those days like you have today. There was no Jesus. There was no God. People were trying to simply learn. Education was only for the very rich. So it was a very, very difficult time.
What was your opinion about violent revolution?
I was never in favor of violence. I thought that violence was not the way things should be resolved. There were many that were very, very violent at the time. And it was, in many ways, the way people solved many problems. Emperors wanted to conquer other countries, other regions, other tribes. But I felt that living in peace would allow people to solve many of their problems.
Did you ever possess wealth?
I never possessed great wealth. I was at times very comfortable in my life. Many people would come to me. I would not charge my students. If a student came to me and had wealth, I would allow them to donate so that we could continue with our teachings. But I never personally possessed great wealth.
Did you teach reincarnation?
I had received information in dreams that individuals would return to multiple lives. I didn't stress reincarnation. I felt that it was a fact. I felt that individuals did return. I felt that animals returned. It was not really until I got back to the other side that I truly understood the concept of reincarnation.
Did you teach of a single deity?
I did. I believed that there was an infinite power. I believed that there was a power beyond us. I did have some of what you would refer to as psychic abilities. It was hard for me to comprehend many of the things that I was hearing in my head. I taught that people needed to lead a good life, that they needed to be honest, they needed to honor the ancients that came before them, their parents. I tried to teach lessons that would give people good lives and bring them happiness.
What did you teach about the afterlife?
I was very uncertain about what the afterlife truly held. As I said earlier, I had had dreams. I had had spirits come to me. I had done many things, but I felt that there was an afterlife. I felt that individuals needed to live a good life. I felt that there was much uncertainty about what the afterlife held. I had read teachings of the ancients, but they did not give a lot of information for me. In the 5th century BC, there were great cultures. Many of our merchants would bring back information about those cultures and how they worshipped many different deities. I did not feel that the way forward would be to worship many different gods, but to focus on your own internal ways of doing things, leading good lives, as I said before.
So, what did you teach about the afterlife? Oh, I'm sorry. One of the main teachings of Confucianism is righteousness. Will you explain that a little further, please?
Righteousness is doing good things for others, living a good life, being honest in your dealings, not taking advantage of others. Basically, living the concepts that Jesus was to preach. As I said earlier, Christianity was 500 years from originating. But I felt that each day you should go forward and that you should do what is right. If you did what you would not want done to you, or I did not word that well, if you did unto others, and I'm borrowing the words of Jesus here, but if you did to others how you wanted to be treated, then indeed all would be well, and you would live a good life.
What was your concept of how political leaders should act towards their subjects?
Political leaders should act on subjects that would benefit those for whom they represent. In those days, or in my day, political leaders often would not do what was in the best interests of their followers. As you're watching today, the political leaders would often want power. They would want to have strong militaries. They would want to conquer their other subjects to bring them plunder and riches. But I felt that political leaders could act very simply. I felt that you should be able to trust them. I felt that simple honesty among the leaders would benefit the people that lived under them and would provide guidance so that the cultures could advance into the future.
Yeah, in regards to this, you once said, if the people do not find the ruler trustworthy, the state will not stand. Tell us how you would apply this statement to our current governments.
I think it applies 100% to any government. You have to have honest political leaders. If you don't have people that you can trust, then you will find that the government will fail. As we watch from over here, we see great similarities in all of the ancient and more modern governments. Many governments are founded on concepts that will help the people. As they advance in time, leaders come in that gain more power. Leaders come in that will steal the funds of the countries or the governments. And there become a time that people will rise against the leaders and essentially destroy that government. It has happened throughout time. And as we watch what is taking place in many of the current governments of the world, we see that only time changes. The free will of your politicians seems to assure that in the long run, all governments will fail.
Yes, sadly, today there's incredible hatred in our country. How would you approach ending that hatred?
If I was in your government, I would come up with policies that would help all members of your society. I would eliminate great debt. Debt will undermine any government. Keep in mind that debt is very costly. If you're in times where costs are rapidly increasing, so will the cost of debt. Many governments borrow money to pay for increasing costs. Once that happens, you become involved in a downward spiral that is very, very difficult to end. I would go to all of your news media. I would go to all of your social media news agencies, and I would explain to them that I was trying to serve all of the individuals of the country. And I would ask them to just simply tell the truth about what I was attempting to do. As long as you have such divergent political parties, it's going to be very, very difficult to stop the hatred.
Do you think there's any chance the government of the United States can continue to exist the way it is now?
If you look at history, you will see that your current government is doing the same as all of the other great governments in the past. Those of us over here that are watching see no reason why the results would be any different. Those of us that watch from over here believe that many of the governments are truly on the wrong path.
Will you discuss with us the meaning of reciprocity as it relates to human life?
How you act is reciprocated by others. If you act with righteousness, if you react with love, if you do not react with anger and hatred, then the odds are very good that those that you are in contact with will reciprocate the way that they are treated. Everything comes down to treating others as you want to be treated.
Okay. The golden rule is very similar to your teaching. Did you actually say, what you do not wish for yourself, do not do unto others?
This was one of my key teachings. I tried to teach all of my students that there is a great equality. that all individuals needed to be treated the same. I wanted all of my students to understand that there is a great unity among all individuals. There is a desire for everyone to be treated with respect and honor.
So did Christianity actually borrow this teaching from you?
I suspect that the early writers of the Gospels touched upon our philosophy. But keep in mind this. I was sent back by God to try to bring a way forward for the people of my time. The angels and the guides were giving me the same information of which God and Jesus would speak when it became his time to walk the earth.
That's good, because we do need to be reminded of that often. What do you see as the future for modern China?
I see modern China on a pathway to destruction. They have so many people, and yet they want to try to use their assets to control the world. I think that China will learn the lessons that were learned by all of the other great cultures. Anyone that tries to be rulers of the world will find that the pathway is very dangerous.
What is your opinion of our educational system today?
In my day, only the rich were educated. But I can tell you that the youth and the individuals that will become political leaders need to understand the past. As I told you earlier, not much has changed in the thousands of years with the great cultures. You need to know history so that you do not repeat the historical mistakes. Today, those that require that they want great power are distorting your educational systems so that the truths of the past will remain hidden from those that will govern the future.
Yes, that's frightening. What's your opinion of leading by example?
Leading by example is the only way of true leadership. If you show righteousness, honesty, love in your method of leadership, then that will rub off on others.
Do you consider Confucianism a religion?
Many do. I considered Confucianism a way of life, a way to bring you happiness, a way to educate others, a way to treat others. A religion is focused on preparing your soul for the afterlife. My way of living would prepare yourself for the afterlife, but it did it without focus upon on a deity or group of deities. So I like to think of Confucianism as a way of obtaining happiness, and as a result, you will find happiness in the afterlife as well.
How did you choose your disciples?
I would generally try to accept anyone that came to me. Of course, many did better than others. If they showed that they truly did not want to walk the path of my footsteps and my teachings, then they would not continue with my school. I had many great disciples. I had many that went forth and affected the life of others. I did, if a student would come to me from a wealthy family, I would allow them. But in general, I did not charge for my services.
What form of government do you believe has the best chance to exist into the future?
Very simply put, a government that practices righteousness, a government that believes in its people, a government that protects its people, a government that treats its people honestly, and a government who has control over its leaders. If the people are treated fairly, the government has the opportunity to exist. The Romans existed because of their great power, their great military. But in the end, bad leadership destroyed that powerful country. Bad leadership will destroy any government.
Out of all the wonderful things that you taught, what do you consider your most important teaching or lesson?
Righteousness, being true to yourself, being true to your God, being true to the teachings that will help others, showing love and consideration for others, protecting the weak, providing aid and help to those that need it. I guess I got a little carried away. That was not just one of my teachings that I just spoke.
Well, they were all so great. How can you pick one? I understand that. We have a quick question from one of our listeners. What lives have you lived since being Confucius? Have you re-lifed?
I have lived 2 lifetimes since that of Confucius. I have been a servant of God in both of those lifetimes. I obviously was not as successful in those lifetimes as I was in the life of Confucius.
Yeah. Confucius, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have a final message for us?
Yes. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. It may seem that many of my teachings were old-fashioned to you of these modern times. You have great dangers in your technologies, your social media, your weapons of mass destruction. It is possible that you can destroy all humanity. That was not a risk that we had in my day. You see, we never even knew how much humanity was out there. I hope that you learn the lesson that the better educated you become, the reality of how little you know becomes more important to you. Break your life down to basics. Show love to others. Do what you know is right. Live a good life. Teach your family to love God. Teach your children right and wrong. You don't have to be involved in intricate religions. You don't have to follow teachings that you know are wrong. And you don't really have to accumulate great wealth. You need to go out and live peacefully, live with love, and do what you know is right. That will bring you to a wonderful life, and it will lead you to success when you return to the afterlife. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming equally.
Okay. We had, in our show this morning, a Sunday sermon, we had Buddha speak to us, and he gave us a wonderful message. So we've asked him back tonight. Buddha, would you like to begin with a message? Yes, I would. I always appreciate the opportunity to try to give guidance to others. I lived in the same time period as Confucius. There were many great philosophers in that period of time. God realized that he had to bring people forth that would speak wise messages. He brought people in the Greek society, in the Middle East where we lived. He brought people forth that would try to give an outline of living good lives. He knew that he would be coming back sometime far in the future, and that God himself would be walking in the form of Jesus. But he had to bring philosophers back that would speak of how individuals could lead good lives. He spoke, I spoke of a way of life. I know that you have some questions for me tonight, so I am ready to answer them, and thank you for allowing me to come through.
Thank you for coming with us twice today. Buddha, would you describe the basic state of spirituality or religions in India at the time of your birth?
Spirituality was basically a reverence for multiple gods, for multiple deities. We worshiped many things. We worshiped items of nature, animals. We would not have any well-defined paths of faith in those days. It was a time where governments exerted their rules upon the people. It was a time of either great wealth or great poverty, as Confucius said. It was a time where there was no clear policy or mandate towards a single type of faith or religion. It was a time of confusion. So it was a very, very difficult time, and I think that is why God decided to send some of us back at that point.
Yeah, will you tell us about your youth, what it was like back then?
I was raised in a very, very wealthy family. I actually did not totally realize how many people were suffering. I was protected from seeing much of what was taking place in the real world. When I got out and saw that people were so mistreated, were so poor, were starving to death, had no roof over their head, I was so affected by what I saw that I decided that I would do my best to try to guide people and to assume a role that would try to help others.
Did you ever teach or speak of a single deity?
I did not. As I said, and as Confucius said, Christianity was not a reality in those days. I tried to focus on making people's lives better. There was no magical way that you could bring people to understand and to help themselves. It was a time where individuals had to do the best they could. There was no way that there was a general employment policy. It was just a very, very difficult time.
Do you consider Buddhism a religion?
I also consider Buddhism a way of life. The people that follow Buddhism today can also be members of an organized religion if they so choose. Buddhism is a way of finding internal peace. It is a way of living a good life. It does many of the things that Confucianism does. It does not include the teachings of a single deity.
Did you teach reincarnation?
I did believe in reincarnation. I felt that if you did not achieve nirvana or internal peace in this lifetime, that you would return and try to do it in another life. I did not truly understand reincarnation until I went to the other side. But upon my passing, I did realize that much of what I was speaking was the teachings of a single deity.
Yeah. Every single soul we've ever asked about heaven, they say it's indescribably wonderful. Is there any way a soul can avoid having to reincarnate?
As I arrived on the other side, I realized that your free will applies in the afterlife as well. I thought of the ultimate level as a nirvana. There are 7 levels. I would equate the 7th level of heaven with what I consider nirvana. But if a soul decides that it's happy with what they have achieved, then they can make the decision not to reincarnate and just simply remain in that level.
Okay, you've mentioned nirvana a few times. What exactly is nirvana?
Nirvana is the highest state that a body can assume through meditations, through understanding yourself, through being one with nature, by being one with all of the best of life has to offer. Nirvana and would compare very favorably with the 7th level of heaven.
Okay. What was your opinion of the caste system?
The caste system was a terrible system. It kept people in their own social status. I was raised in the highest of social categories. So for those in the top category, the caste system was a good thing. It provided workers, provided many things. It provided support for individuals having excessive growth and wealth. Those people, many of them did little for those that were living under their control. So the caste system, in reality, was a very terrible thing.
Yeah. Would you describe how you learned meditation?
There were other individuals that I met that described the benefits of meditating. They taught me how to do it. They taught me that when you meditate, you become one with your internal self. That there are many, many things that you can learn through meditation. I tried to teach those around me to meditate. I received many of my greatest messages through meditation. It is a way of relaxation, and it is a way of isolating yourself from many of the harmful effects of human life.
Do you still believe that meditation is the only path to enlightenment?
Now that I'm on the other side, I understand that many people can obtain high levels of sometimes what you refer to as vibrations, that through prayer you can learn many things. Meditation is still very important. It is probably the easiest way for you to communicate with your guides. It is probably the easiest way for an individual to receive information from the spirit world. But there are individuals that can obtain many of the same results without meditation.
Okay, you mentioned that you lived in quite the life of luxury. Why did you decide to leave that life of luxury?
Because I had a desire to help others. I was caught off guard by how many people were suffering. I was caught off guard by just how great the separation between the different classes or castes were. It was a total shock to me when I saw the real world.
Yeah. How does Buddhism compare to Confucianism?
In many ways, they are similarities. Buddhism teaches an internal growth towards well-being. It has pillars of beliefs. It has multiple aspects to learning a good life. It does many things for the individual. Confucianism varies in certain areas. Confucius wanted people to simply live good lives and do unto others. It is often difficult to compare the two, or to have contrasts between the two.
Yeah. How does Buddhism compare to Hinduism?
Hinduism is a very complex religion. It relies upon many different types of deities. It is a religion that teaches many of the basic concepts of Confucius. It combines certain elements of Buddhism, but Hinduism is a very, very complex religion where those following my words tend to live more simplistic lives.
Okay, you were born several years before God appeared as Jesus. Did you ever have the concept of a universal God enter your mind?
No, I did not have that concept. I had the concept of energies from the other side, but I felt that the importance of understanding yourself and living a good life was ultimately the wisest way of living.
That is the exact message that God gives us all the time. Did arriving on the other side change your opinion of your teachings?
Well, I obviously knew right away that there was a single deity. But I realized, and my guides pointed out, that I had taught many of the lessons that were the directions of God. He had sent me back to try to lay foundational teachings, which I did. That was the same with Confucius. We were laying foundations of living a good life. We were doing God's wishes without truly understanding what was the true foundation, which was following the words of God.
Okay, when you were walking the earth, did you feel a monastic life was required to reach enlightenment?
I did feel that a monastic life would contribute to doing that. When you're leading a monastic life, there is little but time for prayer, meditation, etc. I know now that that is not important, that it is not critical to following the commands of God. It is how you live your life. If you follow the simple teachings of love, of getting along with others, then you do not need such extreme forms of lifestyle as a monastic life.
Yeah. What form of government do you believe has the chance to exist into the future?
I believe that a government has to control, the people have to control their officials that are in charge. The more responsive officials are to the will of the people, the better the government has a chance to exist into the future. If the people follow the teachings of living a good life, of showing love, as we've talked many times, and those people control the politicians, then the politicians will reflect that same type of lifestyle. So I think any governmental system where people or the leaders are elected by people of goodwill, I think that government will have a chance to sustain itself far into the future.
What do you think about our government here in the U.S. today?
I think that the leaders have absolutely no regard for the people. I think that the people need to exert themselves. I think that the people need to convert to understanding that there is a deity and that deity wants them to live good lives. Today, many people are drawing away from the teachings of God. Many do not even believe technology social media, these have all led people away from the teachings of God. If the individual people of our country or of the United States returned to the lifestyle of God and the teaching and his teachings, then they will elect officials that will follow the commands of the people, and the commands of the people will be those of God.
I like that. What do you see as a future for modern China?
I think that they will self-destruct. I think that they are trying to overachieve, that they're trying to be the strongest country in the world, that they're not tending to their people. The simple fact that China has eliminated religions will be their downfall.
Okay. Today, there's incredible hatred in our country. How would you approach ending that hatred?
If it was up to me, I would eliminate the political parties. It would be a long-term approach, but I think that the polarization that is taking place in the United States is a direct result of the political system and parties. I would assure that the teachings of God are taught in your educational system. I would try to lay a complete foundation of love, of cooperation. I would try to make sure that the younger generation realize that it is only through cooperation and compromise that the majority interests can be truly served. We have drawn away from the founding principles in this country. It will not be until people accept the teachings of God, an understanding of coexistence, a feeling that we are all one. It will not be until that happens that your government will truly have an opportunity to exist far into the future.
What is your opinion of our educational system today?
I'm seeing multiple problems with the educational system. First of all, history is being removed from the schools. It is imperative that the younger generation understands the mistakes of the past. Without an understanding of the mistakes made by the ancients, it will be impossible for them not to make the same mistakes. They have to focus on impartial education. Today, many of your institutions of higher learning are simply teaching political opinion. They are not allowing free speech. Quite often, individuals that differ with the opinions of the professors are being punished. The educational system has become so expensive that it is very difficult for gifted students coming from lower income backgrounds to be educated so that they can advance into the future.
Buddha, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with all of us. Do you have a final message?
Yes. I would like to thank you for allowing me to come through tonight. I would like to thank you for allowing me to give my opinions. You're living in very, very troubled times. You have weapons of mass destruction capable of wiping all life from the face of the earth. You need to control much of what is taking place around you. You need to control artificial intelligence. You need to understand that humans were put onto this earth to advance and to learn. They have been put on this earth to understand that everyone is the same, that all individuals are created equally. You need to understand that it is only through the free will used in the proper manner that humans will be able to advance into the future. I want to thank you for allowing me to come through. I want you to focus on living a good life. We sometimes on this side sound a little negative. Humans are perfectly capable of doing what they need to advance far into the future. Just simply follow the words of God, coexist, show love, do away with anger and hatred. So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, next week we're going to have another interview with Princess Diana. Much has been happening. The coronation, Harry and Meghan. It'll be very, very interesting to get some of her opinions. And she's going to be with us next week. You can submit questions and suggestions for future guests through our email, channelinghistoryonparax@gmail.com. My 8th book, Messages of God for a Modern World, and my 9th book, Messages of Muhammad for a Modern World, are now available on Amazon, softcover and ebook with English and Spanish editions. It's available on Kindle for immediate download. All of our shows are available on our YouTube channel. It's in my name, Barry Strohm. If you want to download them, go to Podomatic.com and just simply search Channeling History.
We hope you enjoyed our show tonight. Each week we try to bring you the truth about historical incidents as told to you by the spirits that experienced those events. The truth is out there, and we do our best to try to bring it into you each week. So all of you have a great week. God bless you.
Okay, I'd like to thank all of you, those of you in the chat room. It's very nice to be able to look over and see all of our friends there. Please tell your friends about our show. We try to bring you the truth, as Connie said. We try to do our best. I know what we do is hard to believe, but we are actually speaking with all of these spirits. So thank you for listening. Please join us Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the ParaX Radio Network.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.